What if I told you that doubling your team's call volume today might actually be the exact reason your pipeline is bleeding revenue?
I mean, it sounds completely backwards,
It,
right?
it totally does. But if you are a sales leader, a hiring manager, or an executive who's just staring down a really frustrating quarter, you know this scenario all too well.
Oh, absolutely. You log into the CRM dashboard, and the metrics, they look fantastic.
Right, the activity dials are just completely green.
Exactly. Your reps are making the calls, they're sending the follow-up emails, the LinkedIn messages are just firing on all cylinders.
But then you look at the closed won column, and it is just stagnant. The raw effort is there, clearly, but the revenue isn't following.
And it is arguably the most perplexing, sleep-depriving situation for anyone responsible for a revenue engine. You have the output, you have the hustle, but that translation into actual business value is mysteriously broken.
Yeah, and the instinct in that moment, almost universally, is to just push the machine harder.
Yeah.
You tell the team to make more calls, tweak the cadence, maybe run a new promotion.
Right. Just hit the phones harder, which is usually the worst thing you can do.
Exactly. So today, we're taking a deep dive into a completely different explanation for why that revenue engine stalls out. We're looking at a really foundational article by Nathan Davis, published by the Sales Experts.
It's a great piece.
It really is. The piece explores why true sales success isn't just about rigid strategies or, perfectly optimized playbooks or raw numbers. It's heavily dependent on this intangible, almost invisible factor that Davis calls sales energy.
Yeah, sales energy.
Okay, let's unpack this because, energy can sound a little bit, a bit woo-woo for a B2B sales floor. We aren't talking about drinking 5 espressos and hyping yourself up in the mirror, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And I am so glad you brought that up because the term is frequently misinterpreted as just like mere enthusiasm or aggressive charisma.
Right, the typical finance bro stereotype.
Exactly. What Nathan Davis is really talking about when he says sales energy is alignment. It is about your presence, your intent, and your consistency when interacting with a buyer.
Making sure you're actually present.
Yeah. It is about how you position value and, crucially, how buyers perceive you on a subconscious level.
That subconscious level is huge.
It is. When results start to slip despite high activity, the sales experts frequently see that the root issue isn't a lack of technical skill. It's not a broken market. It's a fundamental misalignment in this energy.
And, before a deal ever hits a spreadsheet, before it ever becomes a glowing green line on a forecast report, it starts as just a simple conversation between two people.
Literally just two people talking.
You're right. So let's look at how this misalignment actually sounds in the real world. According to the source material, the very first indicator that a rep's energy is off is that their conversations start to feel incredibly forced and mechanical.
Right. When a salesperson's intent is misaligned, usually because they are feeling massive internal pressure to hit a quota, you immediately hear it in the interaction.
The vibe just shifts.
Exactly. The fluidity of a natural business conversation completely vanishes. The rep finds themselves clinging to their discovery scripts like a life raft in a storm.
It's like they're trapped in their own heads. You can almost hear the gears turning as they try to remember the exact phrasing of the next qualification question.
Yeah, they're not even in the room anymore.
Totally. And because of that cognitive overload, they completely stop actively listening to the person sitting right in front of them.
What's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism at play. Buyers have an incredibly highly tuned sixth sense for this exact lack of authenticity.
They can smell it a mile away.
They really can.
Sure.
They might not use the terminology of sales energy, but they feel the biological response to it. When a conversation lacks responsiveness, the connection instantly weakens.
Right.
The buyer realizes they aren't a partner in a mutual dialogue. They're just a prop in the salesperson's rehearsed monologue.
It reminds me of the absolute worst networking events. You know the ones. You're standing there trying to have a genuine chat about your industry, and the person across from you is clearly just waiting for their turn to speak.
Oh, the worst. They're just scanning the room or staring blankly.
Yes. They aren't genuinely trying to understand your business. They are just looking for a microscopic pause in your sentence so they can launch into their elevator pitch.
And that leads directly to how the rep actually behaves on the call. Because they aren't listening, genuine curiosity is completely replaced by a sense of urgency.
Right. They just want to get to the finish line.
Exactly. The rep stops trying to diagnose the underlying issues the buyer is facing and instead starts moving way too quickly into pitching the product.
Yeah, the article highlights this as a major symptom. Instead of taking the time to genuinely explore the customer's specific situation, the rep replaces deep discovery with these incredibly shallow solution lead questions.
Yeah, the solution lead approach is the classic hallmark of bad sales energy.
What does that actually sound like, though? Like, contrast that for us.
Sure. So a genuine discovery question sounds like, walk me through how your team is managing this specific workflow today. It's open, it's curious, and it invites the buyer to share their reality.
Okay, that makes sense.
But a solution lead question sounds like, are you struggling with X so that you can buy our software that does Y?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's entirely transparent.
It is. The entire conversation rapidly centers on the seller's quota rather than the buyer's problem.
And you can feel that panic from the rep. They have a manager asking for pipeline updates, so they try to force a square peg into a round hole just to get to the demo phase faster.
And the buyer immediately puts their guard up.
It's like a doctor prescribing a heavy medication before even looking at the patient's chart or asking where it hurts. The patient is going to reject the treatment, not because the medicine is inherently bad, but because the diagnosis never happened.
Precisely. The buyer feels targeted, not supported. And that sets a fundamentally adversarial tone for the rest of the relationship.
Which introduces the recall effect.
Yes. That internal misalignment from the rep suddenly manifests externally as real, tangible friction in the deal.
So because the buyer feels like a target, their natural defense mechanisms kick in. Suddenly, the rep is facing a massive spike in objections, and those objections become incredibly difficult to handle.
This is a critical diagnostic moment for any sales leader listening right now. When the initial energy is misaligned, the natural friction of a complex B2B transaction is severely magnified.
Just blows up.
Exactly. The buyer hasn't felt heard, the unique business value hasn't been adequately established, and as a direct result, resistance builds significantly earlier in the process.
But hold on, let me push back a little here. If I'm a sales manager looking at a dashboard, I expect my team to face objections.
Sure, of course.
A buyer pushing back on price or implementation timelines or asking about a competitor. I mean, that is just Tuesday in B2B sales. So how do I differentiate between a normal, healthy objection and this toxic, bad energy objection you're talking about?
That's a great point. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are absolutely right that objections are the lifeblood of a sales cycle. You want engagement.
Right. Apathy is worse than an objection.
Exactly. But there is a massive structural difference between a logistical objection and a foundational objection.
Okay, break that down.
When your energy is aligned and you've prioritized understanding the buyer's world, an objection is usually just a request for more information.
Like they're trying to figure it out with you.
Yes. It's the buyer saying, I want to do this, but help me figure out how to justify the cost to my CFO.
They are asking you to help them solve a mutual problem.
Exactly. But when your energy is misaligned, when you've been forcing the conversation, rushing the pitch, and pushing those shallow solution lead questions, the buyer fundamentally does not feel understood.
So the objection changes.
Completely. Because of that bad energy, their objections aren't about the logistics anymore. They are a manifestation of a lack of trust.
Ah, I see.
The value hasn't been established, so a standard logistical question about budget suddenly morphs into this insurmountable, deal-killing roadblock. They aren't asking for help. They're looking for an exit.
That reframes the issue entirely. It's not that the objections are new or unusually tough. It's that the foundation of trust just isn't there to support resolving them.
Precisely.
And because reps are suddenly encountering this heightened adversarial resistance on every single call, they start to alter their behavior to protect themselves. They begin actively avoiding challenging conversations altogether.
It is basic human psychology to avoid pain. Strong performance, particularly in enterprise environments, absolutely requires the ability to lean into discomfort.
You have to ask the hard question.
You really do. A great salesperson have to be able to challenge a buyer's assumptions. They have to discuss budgets clearly and unapologetically. They have to address difficult, complex topics head-on.
Right.
But when a rep's energy is off, and they are already feeling a massive wall of resistance from the buyer, there is this huge tendency to just avoid these crucial moments of friction.
They just want to keep everything pleasant. They want to be liked. So they keep the conversations at a totally surface level.
Yep.
They leave the discovery meeting, they update the CRM to a 50% probability, and they think, hey, that went great. The vibe was awesome. No one yelled at me.
But in reality, all they've done is kick the can down the road.
Exactly. They never actually ask the hard questions about procurement, so they are just delaying inevitable decisions and ultimately reducing the quality of the deal.
which is incredibly damaging to the forecast. A surface-level conversation might feel emotionally safe for the rep in the moment, but it actively sabotages the deal's momentum.
It creates a vacuum of information.
Exactly, a vacuum where both parties are operating on assumptions rather than verified facts.
So we've seen how this energy creates friction with the buyer, but let's pivot and look inward for a second. Let's talk about the internal toll this takes on the rep's psychology, their workflow, and the hard metrics that executives actually care about most.
It's a vicious cycle.
It really is, because this cycle of forced conversations and avoided reality takes a massive toll on a rep's confidence.
Confidence in sales isn't a static trait, right? It fluctuates. However, it should be relatively resilient.
Sure.
But when sales energy is misaligned and the rep is constantly hitting these walls of resistance, you see them start aggressively second-guessing themselves.
Overthinking everything.
Oh, absolutely. They overthink every minor interaction. They draft a simple follow-up email 10 times before sending it. And most tellingly for a sales leader, they begin relying heavily on external validation.
What does that look like on the floor, practically speaking?
It looks like a highly experienced rep suddenly needing their manager to constantly tell them they are doing a good job,
Oh, wow.
or asking a manager to join every routine call because they no longer trust their own instincts. They just completely lose their autonomy.
And buyers absolutely pick up on that, don't they? Even if it's super subtle, a buyer can sense when a rep doesn't actually believe in their own process.
It smells a bit like desperation.
Which ties directly into another major symptom. When confidence drops, reps start focusing way too heavily on the outcome, the close, rather than the process of getting there.
When you are lacking confidence and feeling the pressure of a stagnant pipeline, you start desperately looking for the finish line.
You just want the win.
Right. Focusing too heavily on the outcome creates an immense amount of internal pressure, and that pressure entirely changes how you engage with buyers.
How so?
Instead of confidently guiding the buyer through a structured step-by-step evaluation, the rep tries to skip steps. They push for decisions too maturely. They become highly reactive to every little email the buyer sends, rather than proactively managing the relationship.
Here's where it gets really interesting based on the article from Nathan Davis.
Yeah.
You would logically think that if a rep is desperately trying to close and they are making 100 dials a day, they might stumble into a few deals just by sheer law of averages. But the source explicitly states that the pipeline actually slows down.
It completely stalls.
Right. Even if the sheer volume of activity remains incredibly high, the outcomes undeniably decline.
This raises an important question about how sales organizations evaluate performance. If you are exclusively measuring the quantity of activities, the number of calls made, the number of emails sent, the number of LinkedIn requests, you're entirely missing the qualitative degradation of those activities.
Quality over quantity.
Always. Sales energy dictates the quality of the outreach.
So 100 bad dials are actually worse than 20 good ones because you are actively burning through your total addressable market with bad energy.
Exactly. Pipeline health is almost always an early indicator of this deeper energy issue.
Right.
Think about a rep with a high activity volume but a stalling pipeline. If you listen to their call recordings, you don't hear a peer-to-peer business consultation. You hear someone reading a hostage negotiation script.
That is a great way to put it.
When the focus is solely on the outcome, the rep sabotages the quality of the process. Conversely, when energy is properly aligned, the rep's attention is placed entirely on executing the process itself.
They trust the system.
Exactly. They know that if they run the discovery with integrity and curiosity, the outcomes will naturally materialize.
Okay, so we have deeply diagnosed the symptoms. We have mapped out exactly how misaligned sales energy destroys a deal.
From start to finish.
Right, from the initial forced conversations and shallow solution lead questions to the massive spikes in foundational objections, the avoidance of hard budget talks, and finally, the stalling pipelines and shattered confidence.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. Now, the million-dollar question. How do hiring managers and sales leaders actually fix it? And spoiler alert to everyone listening, the answer isn't just hit the phones harder.
Definitely not. The article has a dedicated section on how to reset, and it's remarkably grounded.
Grounded is good.
Yeah, resetting sales energy is absolutely not about increasing activity volume, and it isn't about adopting a completely new sales methodology. It is about returning to the absolute fundamentals of human interaction in a business context.
Let's deliver the actionable takeaways here, because this is where the rubber meets the road for our listeners. The first major takeaway from the source to fix this energy crisis is this: shift the focus entirely to understanding before selling.
This requires a conscious, deliberate mental shift from the rep before they ever pick up the phone or join a video call.
So what's the goal then?
The primary goal entering the conversation shouldn't be, how do I pitch my product features today? It must be, how deeply can I understand this person's operational reality?
How does a manager actually coach that, though? I mean, it sounds great in theory, but reps have quotas. The clock is ticking.
You coach it by changing how you do pre-call planning and post-call debriefs. Instead of asking your rep, what's the path to close, you ask them, what are the top 3 systemic issues this buyer is facing and how does it impact their bottom line?
Oh, that completely changes the focus.
Right. If the rep can't answer that, they haven't earned the right to sell yet. When you prioritize understanding, the rigid scripts naturally fall away and fluid, responsive conversation returns.
That is highly actionable. Okay, takeaway number 2 from the reset section. Prioritize clarity over persuasion. I love this one because it takes so much emotional pressure off the salesperson.
It really does.
You don't have to be a smooth-talking, charismatic persuader. You just have to be incredibly clear.
In complex B2B environments, clarity is infinitely more valuable than persuasion. Persuasion often feels manipulative, right? It feels like you are trying to convince someone to do something against their nature.
Right, it feels salesy.
Exactly. Clarity, on the other hand, builds immense trust.
Can you give me an example of the difference, just so we can really picture it?
Certainly. So a persuasive approach sounds like, our software is going to revolutionize your workflow and give you a massive return on investment. You have to buy it.
Classic pitch.
Right. But a clarity-driven approach sounds like, based on what you told me earlier, your team spends 4 hours a week manually entering this data. Our tool automates that specific transfer, effectively returning those 4 hours to your team.
Wow. The energy difference there is night and day. Yeah, the second one isn't even a pitch. It's just a clear reflection of reality.
Exactly. If you can clearly articulate the buyer's problem back to them better than they can articulate it themselves, you have already won their trust. The sale becomes a logical conclusion, not a forced event.
And the final actionable takeaway for a reset: maintain rigid structure in your process while staying wonderfully consistent in how you engage. So what does this all mean for a sales leader?
Yeah.
Like, how do they actually implement this without completely ripping up their carefully crafted enablement playbook?
It means you don't need a new playbook. You need a new mindset applied to your existing playbook. The structure of your sales process, the initial discovery phase, the technical demo, the executive proposal, that rigid structure provides the container.
You still need the container.
You absolutely need that container, but how you engage within that container must change. It must be consistent, calm, and deeply curious.
It's about bringing the right intent to the perfectly designed process.
Precisely. Small, highly deliberate adjustments in how a rep engages create a massive ripple effect.
Like what?
Choosing to ask one more clarifying question before eagerly offering a solution. Choosing to directly ask about a budget constraint rather than avoiding it because it feels awkward.
Right, leaning into that discomfort we talked about.
Yes. These micro adjustments lead to massive, measurable improvements, especially in B2B, where consistency and trust are the actual currency of sales success.
And when those small adjustments are made, when a rep stops selling and starts understanding, you watch the pipeline unblock.
The conversion rates naturally improve.
And all those visible metrics that leaders obsess over, they just correct themselves because the underlying human interaction has finally been repaired.
It's a beautiful thing to watch.
To summarize what we've unpacked today from the insights provided by the sales experts, true sales success isn't just about what you do or how many times you repeatedly do it. It is fundamentally about how you do it.
The energy you bring.
Exactly. The signs we discussed, whether it's those incredibly forced mechanical conversations, the sudden reliance on shallow solution lead questions, the spike in unmanageable foundational objections, or a pipeline that has ground to a complete halt despite your team making 100 calls a day.
They're all connected.
Right. These aren't just isolated performance hiccups. They aren't just a run of bad luck. They are glaring, systemic symptoms of a fundamental disconnect in sales energy. It's a shift in presence, a shift in intent, and a breakdown in consistency.
It is a critical reminder for the industry that while data and CRM metrics tell us what is happening on the sales floor, understanding sales energy tells us why it is happening.
You just can't fix it with volume.
No, you simply cannot fix a qualitative problem with a strictly quantitative solution. Increasing the volume of bad conversations only scales the damage.
Which brings us to the final, incredibly provocative, concluding thought straight from Nathan Davis's piece. He writes, "Performance starts before the numbers."
Such a powerful line.
I want you, the listener, to really mull that over today. Look at your own team. Look at the stalled results. Look at the dashboard that has you stressed out, and ask yourself one final question. Is the strategy really broken, or is it simply a matter of how you and your team are showing up within it?
Yeah.
If the X-ray of your sales pipeline is murky, maybe it's time to stop checking the machine and start looking at the energy in the room.
It's a paradigm-shifting question for anyone responsible for building and scaling revenue.
Absolutely. And if you are ready to take action, to rethink your approach and dive deeper into building your ideal sales hiring strategy to secure the top 1% of sales talent, you need the right resources.
Definitely.
Whether you are looking to define the exact success profile you need before committing to an expensive search, or you want to explore transformative resources like the Rainmaker Sales Mastery Program to help your existing team return to those core fundamentals we discussed today, the path forward is clear.
Aligning your energy
Yeah.
and hiring talent that natively understands that alignment is the ultimate competitive advantage in modern B2B sales.
We highly encourage you to visit thesalesexperts.com to learn more about how to navigate these exact challenges and fundamentally transform your sales success. Take that step, evaluate your team's energy, and watch how quickly the metrics begin to follow. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.